So the relationship between AEW and Impact Wrestling, that's what everyone is talking about coming out of Dynamite on Wednesday, on top of Sting's debut with the promotion. But it looks like as part of this relationship, even though it's not as intertwined as we thought it might previously been, we might see, going forward, a tag team dream match of sorts between tag teams from both Impact Wrestling and AEW. Now, of course, Kenny Omega, the new AEW World Champion, is set to appear on Impact Wrestling on Access TV on Tuesday, but this is scheduled to just be a one-off appearance and essentially a favour to Omega's longtime friend and future manager in AEW, Don Callis, who of course is currently the Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President. But it has been reported by Wrestling Inc. that the Good Brothers, Impact Wrestling's Good Brothers, the current Impact World Tag Team Champions, will likely be coming to AEW in the future for one match in addition to Kenny Omega making the cameo on Impact this week. Omega's appearance on Impact this Tuesday will likely be used as the setups for the Good Brothers coming to AEW to take on a team that was currently not disclosed to Wrestling Inc. However, they are speculating that the current AEW World Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks, would seem likely. So this match could be potentially the Impact World Tag Team Champions, the Good Brothers facing off against the AEW World Tag Team Champions, the Young Bucks. Now, ironically, we did a video yesterday talking about potential matches between Impact Wrestling talent and AEW talent. One match that I said that I would like to see and certainly would be possible if this relationship was as extensive as we thought. It's not, it turns out. Nevertheless, one match we did discuss was the current Impact World Tag Team Champions, the Good Brothers, facing off against the current AEW World Champions, the Young Bucks. Why? Because it makes so much sense. I mean, in terms of a storyline, in terms of history, in terms of story, in terms of chemistry, it makes the most sense. The most important being the history, right? These are two teams that were members of the Bullet Club in New Japan. That's where they both really made their names and became famous, was during this run with the Bullet Club in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Of course, Kyle Anderson, who is one half of the Good Brothers, one half of the Impact World Tag Team Champions, was the leader of the Bullet Club as well. So they've got all of that history from New Japan. But it's really the history that happened over the course of the last 12 months or so, 18 months or so, is really where this gets into really proper pro wrestling storytelling territory. This is where it gets into something that is absolutely fascinating, and it all starts with the formation of AEW in 2019. Now, later on in 2019, over with WWE on Monday Night Raw, the Good Brothers, Kyle Anderson and Luke Gallows, and AJ Styles, who of course was also part of the Bullet Club stable in New Japan with the Young Bucks, the Good Brothers and AJ Styles, their contracts were soon to expire with WWE. During this period of time in 2019, of course, AEW is happening. The build and the hype is building more and more every single week. We're not yet to Double or Nothing in May. We're not yet to AEW Dynamite happening in October, but AEW exploding is on the horizon. It's an entity at this point. People know that AEW is a company. They know it's backed by Tony Khan, who is a billionaire and lifelong pro wrestling fan. They know it's got the likes of Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, of course Chris Jericho, Hangman Page, Kenny Omega. It's got those people associated with it. AEW is happening, and what more would the Young Bucks want to do than sign their good friends, the Good Brothers, once their contracts expire with WWE? And of course, the Good Brothers, Gallows and Anderson, and AJ Styles were interested. They were interested in hearing the offer from AEW, seeing what the schedule was like, what the money was like, what the creative was like, because at the time, the Good Brothers especially, but still AJ Styles as well to a degree, they weren't being used the way they would like in WWE. They weren't being used that much at all, if anything really substantial. And on terms of AJ Styles, he'd achieved everything he wanted to achieve in the company. He was a former WWE champion. He was WWE champion on multiple occasions, but at one point for nearly a year. He had won, I think he's a Grand Slam champion, Triple Crown champion. He has done it all in WWE. And he also had stated on several occasions that this upcoming contract was his last contract in pro wrestling. So he wanted to make it worthwhile for his family, financially, for himself, in terms of the schedule, the money, the creative, everything above. He wanted that last contract to be as good as it could be. And when it comes to the Good Brothers, they weren't happy with how they were being used. They weren't at the level they thought they were in New Japan. Yes, the money was good, but they were miserable in WWE, especially when it comes to creative and just being a tag team in WWE. Can you blame them? The use of tag team wrestlers and tag teams in WWE is non-existent. It's not a priority for them. Am I saying anything new? No, I'm not. Nevertheless, so the next stage is, of course, the Young Bucks, AEW Executive Vice Presidents. They reach out. They reach out to them all. They reach out to Gallows, Anderson, and AJ Styles. And they have these plans for the AEW Dynamite debut. They have these plans, grand plans for the AEW Dynamite debut in October. Now, of course, what actually happened in October on that first episode of Dynamite on TNT, we saw the show close with the formation of the Inner Circle with Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, Santana and Ortiz, and the debut in Jake Hager. That's what actually happened on that October episode, that first episode of Dynamite. But the original plans for AEW Dynamite, and I'm not making this up, this is out there, the Young Bucks have spoken about this, the Good Brothers have spoken about this is almost common knowledge at this point. The original plans for AEW Dynamite's first episode, one, was that it was scheduled to take place from Madison Square Garden. Now, first of all, of course, that didn't happen. I think WWE kind of locked up that Madison Square Garden exclusivity deal, because previously it was only WWE shows, pro wrestling shows that took place at Madison Square Garden. That changed when Ring of Honor and New Japan ran a show there, that ran the Supercard there, and I don't know if WWE since then has locked up that. They did a couple of shows at MSG last year, some TV tapings. We'll have to wait and see if AEW ever runs a show at Madison Square Garden. So that was the first thing. It was meant to take place at Madison Square Garden, but also the original plans for that first episode of Dynamite would have the debuts of Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson in AEW. Now, what would have happened with their debuts? They would have faced off against the Young Bucks, had a Bullet Club reunion, possibly two-sweeted in the middle of the ring, and then you would have had Gallows and Anderson attack the Young Bucks, turn on them, and become major heels in AEW. Eventually, they would have been joined by AJ Styles as well, and you'd have had a version of the OC, but you'd have essentially splintered versions of the Bullet Club in AEW. You'd have had the heel faction of Gallows, Anderson, and AJ Styles, probably feuding, I would have assumed, with the elite of the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. It would have been the Bullet Club divided, past generations of the Bullet Club coming together. That's what really would have been the situation there. But what happened? Of course, that didn't happen. Now, why didn't that happen? Now, during this period of time where the Good Brothers were negotiating with the Bucks and with AEW, during this time, WWE was terrified of AEW. Why were they terrified? Because they didn't know really what it was. All they knew is that there was this new promotion happening at the end of the year with a billionaire in charge of it, Tony Khan, and they were willing to spend money. They had just signed Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho. That was a big sign of intent as well. Pac. These were big names that had signed to AEW, and WWE was worried and terrified because they had a lot of contracts on their roster that were expiring, whether it was the course of 2019 or into 2020. There were lots of names that were soon to expire, and they were worried they were going to jump to AEW and make AEW a serious contender to the throne, as it were, in the world of professional wrestling. So this is the period of time where WWE is signing guys to 5-year deals on huge money to ensure they don't go to AEW. On some occasions, they're paying these guys a ridiculous wage and signing them to 5-year contracts just to stay at home. There was no creative plan for them. You can ask Maria and Mike Kanellis if there was a plan for them. There wasn't. You can ask Brody Lee. They tried to get him to a 5-year deal and told him, we don't have anything for you, but we want you to re-sign and we'll get you to stay at home. Jake Hager was exactly the same. WWE was terrified of AEW during this period of time. They were signing guys to long-term deals on huge money. They don't even know what AEW is at this point, but they're scared and they're weary. They know that AEW is competition. Even though they don't want to let on that it is, they knew. And most importantly, WWE knew at the time the Good Brothers were very interested in signing with AEW, and AEW was very interested in signing the Good Brothers. But timing is everything when it comes to these things, right? Timing is everything, because during this time, when the Good Brothers are negotiating with AEW and they're considering their options when it comes to WWE and AEW and their future in pro wrestling, during this time, WWE is on a live event tour of Japan. Now, of course, given the Good Brothers and AJ Styles' history in New Japan, they're featured attractions on this tour because they are legitimate talents that can draw a crowd in Japan. Despite not being used well on TV during this period, they're being featured on this live event tour of Japan, which of course grows good numbers for WWE in Japan. Not New Japan numbers, but good numbers for WWE in Japan nevertheless. So to sell tickets, the Good Brothers, during this tour, their teams were none other than WWE Hall of Famer, Icon, Legend, and WWE COO Triple H on this tour. You've got 6-man matches, 8-man matches. They're teaming with Triple H on this tour of Japan. This allows Triple H, who at the time still is involved with talent contracts and talent relations, to talk to the Good Brothers. He has a variety of promises and statements to make to the Good Brothers and AJ Styles during this tour. They get quite close. And Triple H goes on the charm offensive, right? We really want you to stay. We want your family to be protected. You're featured in. You're so important to what we have planned. Plus, they kind of guilted Gallows and Anderson at this point as well, Triple H. They kind of say, and they put that element of doubt in their heads. They say, why would you want to go to AEW? Why would you want to do that? They're a new company. Nobody knows anything about them. Look at the history of pro wrestling and these companies that have tried to compete with the WWE. They'll fail. Just like every other upstart company. Think about your families. We want to protect and ensure the future for your families. Why take the risk? Why take the risk when you know here you've got a guaranteed job, guaranteed income, and a featured spot on the roster? You're going to make so much money. We're going to protect your family, provide for your family. AEW is going to fold. It's going to be off the air within the year. It's going to be like the UWF of Herb Abrams. Tony Khan is just like Herb Abrams. He's a fan with loads of money and he doesn't know what he's doing. It's too big of a risk. Then on top of that, Gallows, Anderson and Styles, they talked to Paul Heyman, at the time the executive director of Monday Night Raw. He's in charge of the creative for that program. He said, you are so important to my plans. The success of Monday Night Raw hinges on you signing with us. We need you to stay. They then get offered huge contracts by WWE for a lot of money for 5 years. And eventually it's too good an offer to turn down. They re-sign with the WWE. So those plans that were in place for the Good Brothers to debut on the first edition of AEW Dynamite, attack the Young Bucks, eventually have AJ Styles join them, it doesn't happen. It's just a hypothetical, right? The Inner Circle happens instead, and the rest is history, as they would say in pro wrestling and in life. Fast forward to 2020, and what does the landscape look like now? AEW is a success. It is a success. It's profitable in its first year, which most companies aren't, let alone pro wrestling. That's because of their newly signed deal with TNT earlier this year. What about the Good Brothers? Well, after signing those 5-year deals with a huge downside guarantee and these huge wages, they get released by WWE after WrestleMania 36, despite being in the main event of the first night with the Boneyard match with The Undertaker and AJ Styles. The Good Brothers get released due to budget cuts associated with the ongoing pandemic. They get lied to by Paul Heyman. You're featured in, you're not going to get released. Triple H says, we want to ensure the futures for your families. We want to help you provide for your family, so much so that WWE want to help provide for the family that they get released during a pandemic where the economy, pro wrestling, finances, jobs, etc. go into the toilet. So WWE is really taking care of Gallows and Anderson's family there, aren't they? Either way, regardless of all of this, it works out for the Good Brothers because they sign with Impact Wrestling, they sign 2-year deals. These deals include options to work for New Japan when they would like, and they're able to actually fly out to Japan and work for them again. They have that ability in their contract. In addition to that, their contracts with Impact Wrestling, they're on good money. Probably 2 of the biggest contracts in Impact Wrestling right now, and probably 2 of the biggest stars in Impact right now, and they've just won the World Tag Team Championship. So in terms of the Good Brothers, it's all good. And now, because of this Impact and AEW crossover, it actually allows for these scrap plans to finally happen. The Good Brothers versus the Young Bucks, it can finally happen. And the story writes itself, it really does. The story can be from the Young Bucks. They can say to the Good Brothers, you turned us down, you sold out, you took the money, you went to the corporate empire, and you're just bitter of AEW success. That's why you're picking a bone with us. And then the Good Brothers can be like, we were lied to. We were trying to protect our families. And realistically, where were you when we really needed you? When we got released by WWE, when we were unemployed during a pandemic, when we didn't know when or where our next paycheck was coming, where were you? We waited for the phone to ring, we waited for that olive branch, but the phone didn't ring and the olive branch never came. Your silence was deafening. And legitimately, for a while, when it comes to the Bucks and the Good Brothers, legitimately there was heat for a while because of the whole issue of re-signing with WWE and turning down AEW. The Good Brothers spoke about that openly. That whole situation in 2019, there was heat. The Young Bucks felt like their friends had let them down. It made them look bad as EVPs in this early run as being EVPs with this big company. And instead, the Good Brothers took the money. The Good Brothers' point of view, it was just business. They were trying to protect and provide for their family. Now, by all accounts, that heat has subsided. The Young Bucks appeared on Talking Shop and Mania 1 on Fight TV. but there is such a story to tell there. Whether it's the history in New Japan and the history of what happened in 2019, if they do it right, I mean, it can be so good. And why would it be so good? Because it would be so real. Real stories in pro wrestling are the best. Why? Because the fans know it's real. Everyone knows pro wrestling's a work. Everyone knows that what they're watching isn't legitimate. But when they can buy in that it just might be, or there's something in there, that there's a possibility that it might be real. I know everything else is fake, and I know the outcome is predetermined, but that seemed real there, or that promo got a little bit too real. That's where pro wrestling is golden. That's where pro wrestling is golden. You buy in. The suspension of disbelief that sometimes can be hard in pro wrestling isn't hard when you believe the situation could be real. And I'm looking forward to that. Now, in terms of the Good Brothers, are they signing with AEW? No, not yet. It's not anything like that. They signed 2-year deals with Impact earlier this year, so they have contracts until 2022. Nevertheless, it will be a big match, and it's a match people want to see. Where, when, I mean, I don't know. They're saying the Good Brothers are coming to AEW, so I'm assuming AEW TV or an AEW pay-per-view most likely. Maybe Bash at the Beach in January, maybe AEW Revolution in February, if they can potentially stretch it out until then. Apparently the angle is going to kick off on air on Access TV on Tuesday on Impact Wrestling, so we'll see and we'll find out very, very soon. Nevertheless, I'm super excited for it. This is why my argument has been that this relationship between AEW and Impact, regardless of how brief and not intertwined we thought it was going to be, it's not lopsided. It isn't lopsided. Impact Wrestling gets exposure of being on TNT, they get exposure of the buzz and the ratings of Kenny Omega appearing on Tuesday on Access, but AEW gets stuff in return. They get talent, they get people talking, and they get matches on their TV, like the Good Brothers versus the Young Bucks, matches we didn't think we were going to see at least for a couple of years. I suppose the question would be, they're both baby faces, how does a babyface versus babyface match work? But what is interesting about this feud and why it could be so good is from a different perspective, both can be the baby faces and both can be the heels. From the Bucks' point of view, the Good Brothers are the heels. They were the ones that took the money. From the Good Brothers' point of view, the Bucks are the heels because they're the ones who didn't understand that it's business, and when they did need them, they weren't there. So there is so much to get into when it comes to this story. It could be absolutely fantastic and absolutely so interesting, and it's something that I'm really looking forward to. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the Good Brothers versus the Young Bucks potentially happening inside of an AEW ring? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, chatting about AEW and Impact Wrestling and WWE and all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to leave a comment below. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.